Not all the stories I collect come from estate sales or abandoned apartments. Some find me in more deliberate ways. 6 months ago, I received a package. No return address. Inside was an appointment book from a tattoo parlor. Black leather, worn at the edges, filled with names and dates and detailed notes about custom designs. The last entry was different from the others. No name, no contact information, just a symbol drawn in the margin. A sigil I didn't recognize, but that made my skin crawl just looking at it. Tucked between the pages was a business card for a shop called Permanent Marks. I looked it up. The shop had closed abruptly 8 months prior. The owner had simply disappeared. This is her story, or at least what I've been able to piece together. This is the story of Maya Chen and the marks that bled through. Maya Chen had been tattooing professionally for 12 years. She'd apprenticed under one of the best artists in Seattle, spent years perfecting her craft, and finally opened her own shop in Portland 3 years ago. Permanent Marks was her pride. A small storefront in southeast Portland with big windows covered in flash art, walls lined with photos of her best work, and 2 pristine tattoo stations that she maintained with almost obsessive care. Maya specialized in custom work. She didn't do walk-in flash. Every piece was designed specifically for the client, often after hours of consultation. She listened to their stories, understood what they wanted to carry on their skin forever, and translated that into art. Her clients loved her, trusted her, came back for piece after piece, building full sleeves and back pieces over years of sessions. Maya took that trust seriously. She was meticulous about hygiene, about technique, about making sure every line was perfect. Her own body was covered in tattoos, a living portfolio of her journey through the art form. Each piece meant something. Each mark was intentional. She never expected her skin to become a canvas for someone else's design. It started on a Tuesday morning in late October. Maya woke up in her apartment above the shop and went through her usual routine. Shower, coffee, check the day's appointments. But when she reached for her coffee mug, she noticed something on her left forearm. A small rose, maybe 2 inches tall, delicate line work, partially shaded. She stared at it, confused. She didn't have a rose tattoo on that arm. She knew every piece of ink on her body, had planned each one carefully, knew exactly where everything was. But there it was, a rose she didn't remember getting. Maya examined it closely. The line work was clean, professional. It looked fresh, slightly red around the edges, like a new tattoo. But she hadn't been tattooed in months, and she certainly hadn't done this to herself. She touched it gently. It felt like a new tattoo. Slightly raised, tender. Then she remembered. 3 days ago, she'd tattooed a rose on a client, a young woman named Sarah, getting a memorial piece for her grandmother. The design had been similar, delicate, partially shaded, about the same size, but that was impossible. Ink didn't transfer like that. She wore gloves when she worked. She was careful. Maya told herself it must be residual ink. Maybe she'd marked herself while cleaning up and hadn't noticed. It happened sometimes. Artists got ink on themselves all the time. She washed the area thoroughly. The mark didn't come off, but it did seem to fade, slightly. By afternoon, it was barely visible. By evening, it was gone completely. Maya convinced herself she'd imagined it, or that it had been a smudge after all. She was wrong. The next morning, there were 2 marks. The rose was back on her left forearm, darker now, more defined, and on her right shoulder blade, a place she could only see by twisting in front of the bathroom mirror, was Han Anchor. Maya's hands shook as she stared at her reflection. The anchor. She'd tattooed that design 4 days ago. A middle-aged man named David, getting it as a symbol of stability after a difficult divorce. 2 tattoos she'd done on clients, now appearing on her own skin. This wasn't residual ink. This was something else. Maya spent the morning canceling her appointments, claiming she was sick. She sat in her apartment, researching, trying to find any explanation. Allergic reactions, stress-induced hallucinations, anything rational. But the marks were real. She could feel them. could photograph them. They existed, and they were changing. By noon, she noticed the rose looked different. The petals were wilting, edges browning, some falling away. It was no longer the fresh, beautiful rose she'd designed for Sarah. It was dying. Maya grabbed her phone and pulled up Sarah's social media. Her last post was from that morning. Worst day ever. Everything is falling apart. The anchor on her shoulder blade had changed too. It was sinking, pulled down by an invisible weight, chain links breaking. She found David's Facebook, his most recent post. Lost the house. Lost everything. Starting over from nothing. The tattoos weren't just appearing. They were reflecting the clients' lives. Their pain. Their struggles. Maya felt sick. Over the next week, more marks appeared. A bird with broken wings the client had died in a car accident 2 days after getting the tattoo. A compass with a cracked face the client had posted about feeling lost. Directionless. Suicidal. A tree with roots tearing up through the ground the client's family was fracturing, falling apart. Each morning, Maya woke to find new marks, or existing ones transformed into darker versions of themselves. Her body was becoming a map of other people's suffering, and she couldn't make it stop. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating, spent hours researching tattoo folklore, spiritual connections, anything that might explain what was happening. She found references to old beliefs that tattoos created permanent bonds between artist and client, that ink, mixed with blood, created mystical connections, that some symbols could act as doorways or anchors for supernatural forces. But nothing explained this. Nothing told her how to stop it. Maya stopped taking new clients, closed the shop for a week, claiming personal emergency. She couldn't risk creating more connections, more marks that would bleed through onto her skin. But the damage was already done. She had hundreds of clients, years of work, and every single one of them was connected to her now, whether she wanted it or not. Then, on the 8th day, someone knocked on the shop door. Maya almost didn't answer. The closed sign was clearly visible, but the knocking continued, patient, persistent, rhythmic. Finally, she went downstairs and opened the door. The man standing outside was old, maybe 70, maybe older. It was hard to tell. His face was gaunt, skin almost gray, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones. He wore a suit that looked decades out of style, perfectly pressed, but somehow wrong. His eyes were the worst part. Maya couldn't quite focus on them. The color seemed to shift gray, then black, then something else entirely. "I need a tattoo," he said. His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried clearly. "We're closed," Maya said. "I'm not taking clients right now. You'll take me." It wasn't a question. And somehow, Maya found herself stepping aside, letting him in. The man knew exactly what he wanted. No consultation needed. He pulled a piece of paper from his jacket pocket and unfolded it carefully. On the paper was a symbol Maya had never seen before. A sigil, circular, with geometric patterns radiating from the center, and strange characters around the edge that looked like no alphabet she recognized. "This," the man said. "On my chest, over the heart." Every instinct Maya had screamed at her to refuse, to tell him to leave, to run, but she couldn't. Her hands moved automatically, preparing her station, setting up her supplies, loading the tattoo machine. The man sat in the chair, perfectly still. He removed his shirt, revealing a torso covered in scars not random, but deliberate. Patterns, other symbols. A lifetime of marks. Maya positioned the stencil over his heart. Her hands were shaking, but she couldn't stop. The tattoo machine buzzed to life. For 2 hours, Maya worked in complete silence. The man didn't flinch, didn't speak, barely seemed to breathe. The sigil took shape under her needle, precise, geometric, somehow wrong in a way she couldn't articulate. The lines seemed to move slightly when she wasn't looking directly at them. The ink seemed darker than it should be, almost black hole black, absorbing light. When she finished, the man stood without a word. He put his shirt back on, placed a stack of old bills on the counter, far more than the tattoo cost, and walked to the door. "Thank you," he said, without turning around. "The binding is complete." Then he was gone. Maya stood in her empty shop, staring at the door, trying to understand what had just happened. Then the pain started. The sigil appeared on Maya's chest that night. Not a faded copy, not a distorted version. The exact same design, in the exact same location, as if she'd tattooed it on herself. But this one was alive. Maya watched in the bathroom mirror as the lines began to spread, slowly at first, then faster, branching out from the central symbol like roots or veins or cracks in glass. The lines moved across her chest, over her shoulders, donor arms, everywhere they touched. She felt cold? A deep, bone-level cold that had nothing to do with temperature. And then the visions started. She saw through Sarah's eyes, as Sarah cried in her car, overwhelmed by grief. She felt David's despair as he packed boxers in his empty house. She experienced the moment of impact that killed the client with the bird tattoo. Every client she'd ever tattooed, every connection she'd ever made, all of them flooding into her at once. Their pain, their fear, their suffering, and something else. Something feeding on it. The entity that had posed as the old man wasn't human, had never been human. It was ancient, hungry, and had fed on human suffering, but it needed connections to reach its victims. Needed anchors. Artists made perfect conduits. Every tattoo created a permanent link. Every piece of ink was a doorway, and Maya had just completed the ritual that bound her to it completely. The sigil was a collector's mark. A claim of ownership. Through her, the entity could reach everyone she'd ever tattooed, could feed on their pain, amplify their suffering, harvest their despair, and she couldn't stop it. Maya tried everything. She tried to cover the spreading marks with bandages, but they appeared on top of the gauze. She tried to burn the appointment book, but it wouldn't catch fire. She tried to warn her clients, but when she called them, her voice wouldn't work. The words wouldn't come. The entity had claimed her completely. She was its property now. Its tool. The marks continued to spread. Within 3 days, her entire torso was covered. Within a week, they'd reached her face. She stopped going outside, stopped answering the door, locked herself in her apartment, and watched as her body became a canvas for hundreds of overlapping tattoos. Every client she'd ever worked on, all bleeding through simultaneously. A reflection in the mirror showed someone she didn't recognize. Someone covered in symbols and images and pain. And in the center of it all, over her heart, the sigil pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't her heartbeat. On the 15th day, Maya made one final entry in her appointment book. She wrote, "I understand now. Every mark is a door. Every connection is a chain. I thought I was an artist. I was just a collector. And now I'm part of the collection." Then she walked out of her apartment and disappeared. The shop stayed closed for 2 months before the landlord finally entered. He found everything in perfect order. Clean stations, organized supplies, no signs of struggle or disturbance, just an appointment book left open on the counter, and a note that said, "Don't look for me. I'm where I need to be." The police investigated briefly. No evidence of foul play. No body. No leads. Maya Chen had simply vanished, like so many others before her. Her clients reported strange experiences after her disappearance. Their tattoos would ache at night. They'd have dreams of being watched. Some claimed their tattoos moved when they weren't looking, but no one could prove anything. And eventually, people stopped talking about it. The shop was cleared out, the equipment sold, the flash art taken down, everything except the appointment book that found its way to me. I've spent months researching Maya Chen, interviewed her former clients, tracked down her apprentice master, followed every lead. No one has seen her since that October. No body was ever found. No evidence of where she went. Just that appointment book with its final entry and that symbol drawn in the margin. I keep it in the locked drawer with the photograph from the artist who drew the woman in the coffee shop. 2 stories. 2 artists, 2 disappearances. I'm starting to see a pattern, but here's what keeps me awake at night. 3 days ago, I noticed a small mark on my forearm. Just a tiny line, barely visible. I thought it was a scratch. Yesterday, it was longer, more defined. This morning, I recognized it. It's the beginning of the sigil, the same one from Maya's appointment book. I never got a tattoo, never sat in Maya's chair, never met the old man. But I have the appointment book. I've studied the symbol. I've connected myself to the story. Some stories don't just find you, some stories claim you. And once you're marked, you become part of the collection.